The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, first of all, can you show me your credentials?
Man. Did you? I almost debated. I'm doing well, thank you. Most people aren't going to catch that reference, I think. That's a niche one. But I maybe give people an idea of what you're talking about there by slipping in that little
no.
jib
I don't think we need to.
At our podcast network. There was a man on Twitter who came after our podcast network and said...
He specifically said that we are... I don't know how he worded it. Devaluing what other podcasters do in some way or another.
And to
which
be clear,
maybe we are. I don't know.
Wasn't talking about us specifically, but was talking about Blue Wire podcasters and more generally about fans who run podcasts and why do people listen to fan-run podcasts and not just to the journalists themselves. Anyway, we don't need to get into a whole conversation about that. I think it's pretty evident why people come to fans sometimes for analysis. Anyway, I am doing well.
Right. Most people don't know that you can only watch the games if you have credentials.
Yeah, it's silly.
It's
silly.
I'm glad you're doing well, especially because we're recording this immediately after the Suns lost in overtime, which of course is like a Phoenix Suns thing to do, in a pretty exciting game, albeit a frustrating ending. But Sam, we've officially been able to see 2 full games for the Suns so far. We're coming at you a little early because I'm going out of town, so we're recording after this Portland game to react to the first 2 games. I recorded for our Patreon after the Dallas game without you, so I'd like to talk about both of those games, but let's talk first about this Portland game that just ended. A brutal ending. DeAndre Ayton missing a free throw at the end after a really good game for him. What are your initial thoughts watching this team play in these first 2 games, but specifically this Portland one?
Yeah, I would echo that just about DeAndre Ayton at the end there. That was brutal because I guess really you could say as a general theme in the first 2 games, but especially this game as well. I mean, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton have been 1A and 1B on this team so far. I think that's the main takeaway through 2 games.
Yeah.
Chris is taking a substantial step back. For me, that isn't all that surprising. In fact, I think it's something we've asked for, and I think it's something a lot of Suns fans have asked for. Also, I don't think it's necessarily speaking towards his basketball ability. I think there is some natural regression maybe in Chris Paul's game, given age and injury history at this point. But for the most part, I think he's just taking a step back, and I think DeAndre Ayton is taking a step forward. Couple that with Cam Johnson, unfortunately struggling with some injuries through the first 2 games. Mikal Bridges.
And shooting, yeah.
Yeah, and Mikal Bridges is kind of still just Mikal Bridges. He's been good, but this team is really centered around Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton right now. And, there are a lot of promising elements there in the sense that there are a lot of exciting things we could talk about with DA through 2 games, I think. But also understanding we haven't seen the Suns struggle this much depth-wise at all in the past 2 seasons, I think. And now this is the first time it's really becoming a new challenge for Monty Williams, for James Jones, especially. And look, I don't think a lot of that is all too surprising for us either. I think we basically called it during the summer.
Yep. And I think, it's a good point to say that there's no surprise as far as depth goes. It is interesting to see it play out. There are, I think, elements on the bench which have been good, elements that have been bad, but I think there's just a lack of you need a couple other good players, more than anything else. We have seen, though, the Suns still have quite a few, I think. You see when it works with Cameron Johnson, the first quarter of this game against the Trailblazers, the second half of the game against the Dallas Mavericks, and it really works. It really does. The offense clicks. Cameron Johnson is not the individual defender that Jay Crowder was, but the defense still works when those 5 are on the court, a bunch of smart players moving in unison, the defense still looks great. But, start to mix it up from there. And, not so good. I think, I don't want to make you apologize for your what you said about Damian Lee.
My Damian Lee slander. Well, I will say.
But you're going to be right more often than you're wrong, I think, about Damian Lee.
Look, I think there are a lot of things we could criticize about Damian Lee, but, also, first of all, no one expects him to be logging 30 minutes so soon in a game like this. Like, he logged 30 minutes tonight. He wasn't brought in to do that. That is just a depth issue built into the roster and having to deal with kind of these unexpected problems. But also, credit where credit is due, because no player... for anyone who follows me on Twitter, yes, I was criticizing Damian Lee. I criticized Damian Lee.
And on the podcast.
On the podcast. Was that... I don't remember if that was the main feed of the Patreon, but I did think... Yeah. I said something about, look, Damian Lee is a player who I think self-creation-wise leaves a lot to be desired. And
he's not... Yeah, and he's not there to do that.
And so if that's the case, you need to shoot really well and you need to defend really well. And unfortunately, I think he does one of those two things kind of well. However... all that being said, he took a completely glorious wet dump on my face by hitting the big shots in game 1. So if you're gonna hit the big shots in the big moments, then there's not really all that much I can say. He's gonna earn the minutes, earn the rotation time, whatever. But even in a game like tonight, I think we still and also in a game against Dallas. I think when you're playing a guy like Damian Lee, who has a 6'7", 6'8" wingspan, next to Chris Paul and Devin Booker late in games, you already have to hide Chris Paul on defense. Now you kind of we saw, he played some suspect defense on Luka, and tonight I think we saw it too. Again, it's not his fault because he shouldn't have to be in this position in the first place. It's just you can see the cracks in the rotation where if Damian Lee hits big shots, he's going to be that guy, but asking him to do it on a night-to-night basis is just tough.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's all the guys on the bench at this point. Torrey Craig is already losing his minutes entirely, basically, to Damian Lee, and I think we can see more of that coming. Jock Landale, as fun as his preseason was, is not going to be.
I'm sorry, is that Jock
saving grace?
Jock Lawndale? Do you mean? Shout out Mark Jones.
How about Jock Landale, which Eddie Johnson said a few times. In this game, there's a lot of different pronunciations.
Is Dario Saric is that not a thing this year?
Apparently not. Yeah. The only time he played in these 2 games that we saw was in game 1 when Cameron Johnson was out with cramping. Different issues, by the way, with Cameron Johnson in each game. I think we're not entirely sure at the point of recording this what went down in game 2, where he didn't start the second half, came in for a while, looked bad, and then left and did not play again in that game. And it is sort of ironic, right, to think about the situation with Jay Crowder not being able to start, and he would have started 2 halves for the Suns already had he been on the team right now. Unfortunate to lose another good player to something other than injury. The Suns are just down a guy for no reason other than, he's under contract. They're down a guy for no reason other than they're willing to acquiesce to him. To give him what he wants, which I'm not saying necessarily is a bad thing, but it is sort of a new era in the NBA where something like that is happening for a player like Jay Crowder.
Yeah, I totally feel that. But on the other hand, it's I don't want players who don't want to be here. I don't want players who aren't committed to the vision of trying to,
shout out Eric Bledsoe.
I guess I've worded it in the most obvious way, but I want players who are committed to the vision of what the Phoenix Suns are trying to do. Their current mission of trying to, I guess you could say, extend themselves and win a championship. And what's a better demonstration of that than the fact that Chris Paul, of all players, was benched in game 1 and did not pout on the bench. No. He did not pout and then go and complain and talk about touches and roll and whatever. And I think just drew a contrast to the fact that, look, I still appreciate the contributions that Jay Crowder made in his time as a Sun, but it is kind of pathetic the way he's going out if you think about it.
It's really unfortunate, and I think to Chris Paul's credit, it was nice to see. I think it was a smart decision by Monty Williams in that Mavs game, if we're going to sort of mix up the games we're talking about here, to not put Chris Paul in when he was such a, in their words, pigeon defensively against the Mavs, such an easy target for somebody like Luka Doncic to pick on. So to not give them that opportunity late in the game when it was probably one of the major parts of their game plan in closing that game, I think was really smart by Monty Williams, and I think it took some guts to not play somebody who is really he's got a lot of pride, Chris Paul. You know, we've talked about it before in his refusal to rest for games, but I think, you know, the amount of minutes he played last year, which was more than the year before that in Chris Paul, and, you know, the amount of games that he plays overall, I think it shows that he wants to be out there any moment that he's capable of being out there. So Monty saying no, which honestly, Chris Paul acted like it happened all the time in the post-game interview. It doesn't. It almost never happened with Chris Paul. I don't remember a singular game. Maybe there was one or two, but
I do not.
I don't remember a singular game where that happened. So for Monty to do that was really great. The flip side of that is, and I think this is probably something that is going to be an important topic for us to talk about, they had to bench him. And they had to bench him because he didn't look good.
Well, okay, I wanted to ask you about that in the first place because I think I already addressed it kind of in my beginning statement, but the way Chris Paul has played through 2 games, I mean, he's still racking up assists, obviously, running the offense, particularly in transition. He makes better reads than anyone else. He had 5 steals tonight as well.
Yeah,
but he's that's a concerned
No, it's good. I just
but
like,
he
has to do that to be effective on defense.
No, sure, but so he shot 6 for 17 through these first 2 games. That's slightly better than 33%, and I think Suns fans are asking themselves right now, okay, is this it? Is he just taking a step back?
Yeah.
Or is this like, oh no, Chris Paul is cooked? I don't think he's cooked. I think he's taking a step back. But what do you think?
I think he looks out of shape.
If
I'm just breaking it down to the very basic core of what I'm seeing. And I think it stands out when Mikal Bridges, DeAndre, and Devin Booker, Cameron Johnson are all coming into camp in great shape. And I think for a few of those guys, Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, the best shape that they've come into the season to start their career or to at any point of their career. And, you know, Devin Booker just always comes in shape. So there's, you know, he's sort of outside of that. He's always a secret hard worker in the summer. He doesn't post any clips of him doing it. And Chris Paul doesn't look in shape right now. And I think he doesn't look in shape. I don't want to be speculating about this, but he doesn't look in shape to the point where I was thinking, did something happen in the offseason that he couldn't work out? You know, like, did I miss something? You know, like usually when guys come into the season out of shape like that, it's, you know, they were rehabbing or something. You know, there was always something else happening. But with Chris Paul right now, just looking at him, looking at just his body and the way he looks, it doesn't look like he did last season. He looks a little bigger. And I think that in some ways that's less of a concern in that if you say that he's playing not very well right now, I think there is a world where he plays himself into shape and starts playing a lot better throughout the season, which, by the way he's played so far, 12 assists in this game, in the Trailblazers game.
1 turnover.
I think that,
classic.
I think that he'll be, classic Chris Paul game, outside of just 10 points. But I do think that he's just going to play better in general. We've seen these 2 games, you know, not to overreact to 2 games in any way. But as he plays himself into better shape, I think he's going to play better. But my first reaction to how he's playing right now is a reaction to the fact that he doesn't look as slim as he has in the past.
Sure. I hadn't really considered sheer body weight, I will be honest. But like, to your more general point, if this is the new Chris Paul, right? Like, let's say it's a combination of both. Even if he does play himself into shape, if he's generally taking a step back in the offense, and the new Chris Paul is 10 points, 10 assists per game. I don't know. Just throwing numbers out there. But you know,
Rondo.
A guy who is like the fourth
Rubio.
The 4th or 5th option on offense. Like, we're not even talking about the 3rd option on offense anymore. Then, you know, given the defensive, I don't know if you would say liability exactly, although liability maybe in some clutch situations.
Defensive liability against great teams.
Sure. He's still solid. He's still solid against solid teams, but we're not concerned about beating solid teams. We're concerned about beating great teams. Then, yes, there will be more situations like we saw in Game 1. there will be more situations where we need to go full point book. And Chris, for better or worse, has to suck it up and sit on the sideline for a few minutes. And all the more reason that I think Devin Booker already has this pedigree, but DeAndre Ayton as well. Those two guys need to learn to play their best basketball together and to really learn how to carry the Suns' offense in clutch time. And I think that's why if we want to really focus on something positive, DeAndre Ayton in the first 2 games, his offensive growth, but also his
Devin Booker,
Devin Booker for sure too. Devin Booker, I guess it's almost like we shouldn't take it for granted. I want to start with Ayton if you don't mind, because it's kind of it's kind of like we talked about him coming out of that Pelicans series and playing his most complete basketball, and I really do feel like we've seen an extension of that in games 1 and 2, where he is playing his most complete basketball of his career so far. What do you think?
It's definitely the best start to a season that we've seen from DeAndre Ayton. He looks strong. He looks in shape. He looks focused and ready. It's not to say that he's perfect, and I think they are trying to do different things with him than he's done in the past. So to think that that's going to go entirely smoothly 100% of the time is an expectation that I didn't have. And I like that they're trying different things with him, just using him more in the short roll more than anything else. He had a turnover to the corner. He lost the ball on one of them. These are things that are going to happen if they try to do it. But they're also, it's the singular most important play to be able to counter how Devin Booker has been guarded in the playoffs in the 2 series that they lost in the last 2 years, which is being able to give the ball to DeAndre Ayton when Devin Booker is trapped. And I think the results have been more positive than negative with DeAndre Ayton in that particular play. But outside of that, I think he's just been really great. There was some moments in this game, too, where it's like the touch on the floaters, you just expect it to go in with him that weren't going in, and he still had a great game. And you think, wow, if that touch starts dropping in regular games, he's going to get to 30 really easily. And if he is this focused on a game-to-game basis, which is always a question with him, but I think, as the years have gone by, has become less and less of a question every season, then, it's really... You talked about on Twitter 20 points per game for DeAndre Ayton is there for him, and I think I agree with that. It's just like I don't know how much it would take for him to do that. I think he could easily get there.
He got to 18 in game 1 with foul trouble. Like he played 7 minutes in the first half of game 1, had some serious foul trouble, still got to 18. Tonight he got to 26. Look, so the average there between 2 games is 22. I don't want to extrapolate too heavily, but it just feels like with what you were talking about right there with the short roll, again, it comes back to Chris Paul taking a step back in the offense, but there was that stretch late in tonight's game against Portland where they were just running the offense through his short roll again and again. And yes, he made some mistakes. He passed to the corner when he should have gone up with the shot. He had some turnovers, but it honestly felt like with the way Chris Paul was feeding him, almost like Chris would rather lose this game through DeAndre Ayton's short roll errors if it meant that in the long run he was going to learn how to do it, right?
And Booker too, I think, who has trusted him less in the past.
Right, but way more through these first 2 games. That's a great point.
Yes.
Like they don't care if he's hesitant to shoot like every third time or if sometimes he, commits a turnover on the pass. Sorry, they're going to keep running it through him. I got a little too excited. They're going to keep running that play through him because they know that unlocks his offensive ceiling and ultimately the Suns' offensive ceiling, the Suns' ceiling as a basketball team. They can't beat the best teams until DeAndre Ayton learns how to do that. So they're going to keep running that play right through him, even if it leads to the occasional regular season loss against the Portland Trailblazers. And that's definitely not the reason the Suns lost to the Blazers tonight. But my point just being, again, Chris Paul could have easily, come off the screen, gotten into his typical mid-range spot, taken 5 or 6 more of those elbow jumpers tonight in the final several minutes like we usually see. Instead, we saw a much more heavily DeAndre Ayton-focused offense. And I just think that's the theme of what we're going to continue to see all year.
And it's the right choice. I've mentioned it. We're going to refer back to our internal development episodes. That's why we do them. But it's something we talked about in both Devin Booker's and DeAndre Ayton's episodes, in that the best future for this team as currently constructed is their offensive games in particular complementing each other to the highest degree. And that means that their synergy needs to be on point, and that means that DeAndre Ayton needs to look to score pretty consistently. But also when he's doubled or when other players are coming at him in the short roll, he has to be ready to pass. And I think, something I asked for, really extensively in the DeAndre Ayton episode is trading out some of those post-ups for the short roll. And they're doing that. They're 100% doing that. As much as his post-ups have still looked pretty good, I don't even remember one in the second half. It's almost entirely using him in the middle of the floor in the Saric role,
right?
Basically,
the way
and trying to find ways to use him there,
rather than just doing an entry feed to a post-up early in the shot clock, which again I've talked about. I think you've talked about in the past, like not ideal offense to just get a guy a post-up touch with 17 seconds on the shot clock where he's pounding it into to like a 7-1.
Nobody else is involved.
Exactly. Yeah. And nobody else is involved. There aren't many passing angles out of that. Instead, yeah, of course, they're leveraging, they're using DeAndre Ayton's inside gravity. They want to get him shots close to the rim, but the way they're doing that is they're trying to find the mismatch first. They're trying to work the switch first through a variety of screens. And what Ayton has been so good at also in the first two games is making these athletic catches and then quick finishes midair, where he'll get the switch on a guy, he'll seal off a smaller body, and then he'll catch it, 3, 4, 5 feet out and finish midair. Sometimes he'll catch it, he'll spin midair, and he'll finish without even bringing the ball down. And
he had a beautiful one from Mikal in this game.
It's such easy instant offense for him because if he gets that switch on a 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guy, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But at that point, yes, of course they want to leverage his post-up game. Of course they want to use that. They just understand that some other pieces have to fall into place first.
Yeah, and if they can force guys to front him when he's that deep, the pass has to be threaded. But if he catches it, it's an easy bucket. There's no helping out on that unless you bring another guy to foul him, basically. And they've done a good job of forcing smaller guys to front him in when he's coming off of pick and rolls or however they're doing it. There's multiple ways for them to get that off. But on the other side of that, I do want to talk about his defense because
totally,
I think that he's been really solid defensively in both of the first games. The defense with him in the Dallas game stood out so dramatically compared to when he came off the floor. To be fair, they are trying different things with Jock Landale. He ended up in foul trouble too because of that. And then Biyombo came in, and it's just this there's no consistency on the defensive end for the bench. But Ayton's just so much better than those guys that everything just stands out when he's on the floor defensively. He can cover more ground, for one. He's really good at contesting at the rim. There's been more fouls in these two games than we're used to seeing from him, like on a game-to-game basis. That just happens. He's a center. And the refs are kind of getting into the flow of the season as much as the players are. So there's some level of adjustment that's going to come as a result of that. But in particular, in this game, in the Portland game that we just watched, he made some massive defensive plays towards the end of the game.
Oh, yeah.
That it wouldn't even have gone to overtime, I think, if he didn't do that.
Yeah, no, totally. He had a block. Well, I guess generally the issue with Ayton, right, like that we're thinking about, we want him to play more minutes. We talked about that in was it the internal development episode or the over-under episode? Maybe both. Definitely the over-under episode, we talked about it. We want him to play more minutes, but you're also burdening him with more offensive responsibility. So the natural consequence there is the wondering if that's going to take a toll on his defensive concentration, especially late in games. But then you had a play like tonight, that block on Damian Lillard, I think it was, with just a couple minutes left, that kept it at a tied game at a critical point in the game. Where, just a moment in the game where Ayton's already logged 35, 36 minutes, and you're wondering, does he have anything left? And then Lillard's a couple steps ahead of him, and he just lifts off and somehow gets to the rim and is able to save those 2 points and just proves that, yes, when he's motivated, he absolutely, he's a young guy, he's an athletic guy, he's agile, and he still has that energy late in games to make big defensive plays. So then he had a steal a couple minutes later to save the game once again. So he was absolutely critical just in getting them to overtime in the first place.
Yeah. And then he gets put on the line at the end. Damian Lillard, I did see this after we started recording, just went in his face and started talking trash to him, looking directly in his eyes.
Yep.
Right before he shot the free throws. And, with DeAndre Ayton, a lot of people have asked him to have the ball a little bit more in the clutch. By the way, a great pass by Devin Booker, who we're going to talk about next, on that DeAndre Ayton roll there at the end. But he hasn't really been put in that position to shoot free throws in clutch situations very often for the team this year, especially with no time on the clock. He has done it in the last 5 minutes of a game. People foul him. But it's rare that he's the guy with the game on the line taking the free throws. And look, it's good for him to get reps of that. It's just good. Over time, he'll get more used to it. Over time, he'll get better at it. I don't think we've seen DeAndre Ayton get worse at anything throughout his time with the Suns. So I think we can be pretty confident that as he gets reps with different things, he'll get better at it. So it's unfortunate that he missed that. By the way, the second miss was a great miss. If we're giving him credit for something there, rolled right off the side into Jock Landale's hands.
Who is that intentional, or are you just confused now too?
It's intentional.
Okay.
He had a chance. Landale had a chance to send it to double overtime, and he kind of missed a bunny. He's sitting on his ass for the last 20 minutes, so he came in the game and just missed a bunny. But it happens. But with DeAndre Ayton, one thing I'll say, if we want to be fair about him entirely, obviously I think the turnovers are going to get better as he learns more of the short role, especially with new teammates who are on the floor at times with him in that role. But I would like to see more intent on offensive rebounds for him. I do think he often concedes the defensive rebound, especially to bigger centers like Nurkic, a little too early without fighting before the shot goes up or while the shot goes up. And it's sort of he only had 6 rebounds in this game, I think. And it is partially a fault of the Suns roster construction.
To your point,
he's the only guy that can do it.
Nurkic had 17.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the box score. I've seen the Suns side, but I just looked at the Blazers side for the first side right now. Obviously, I know Dame went off, but no one else was really eye-popping in this game from the Blazers side, but Nurkic did have 17 rebounds. That's pretty crazy.
And if you're going to talk about Ayton has to get out and guard at the perimeter, first of all, they're using him in the drop more than anything. He does switch occasionally, but especially in this game, often those switches resulted in him chasing guys to the rim. And fair, maybe he gets less defensive rebounds, but I think less opportunity on the defensive rebounds kind of does highlight the importance of him getting rebounds on the other end and how that turns into extra possessions for the Suns. The Suns often will lose the amount of three-pointers taken to the other team. They're going to take less. They often will lose the free throw battle. In this game, they lost it dramatically. Extra possessions for them, if they can be created in any way. This game, it was a lot of turnovers in favor of the Suns. But any time they can find extra possessions in any way will really benefit them in a way that is going to seem more obvious because they don't do a lot of the math things that add up.
No, they absolutely do not. And
and look, it's turned into a lot of wins for them in the past. So they have to be great in the clutch, though. That's another reason they've had so many wins. So those offensive rebounds turning into extra possessions will be nice to see him work on that throughout the season. I'm not going to fault him for not doing it in 2 games, but it's something that I'd like to see out of him.
I think I might just start keeping a counter this year of how many games where the Suns have both fewer threes and fewer free throws than the other team. So far, they are 2 for 2. In that tonight,
they're 1-1.
They had
in those games.
And they're 1-1 in those games. But they shot fewer threes than the Blazers. That was not surprising to me. They also shot fewer free throws. Although I would say 21 free throws for them is not entirely disastrous. Booker.
Actually, let's take a break. And let's talk about Devin Booker in just a second. We'll be right back to talk about Devin Booker. Okay, another guy we want to talk about here is Devin Booker, Sam. And I think Devin Booker, I did something before we started recording here. I went back and I looked at the first 2 games of every season for him because I think Devin Booker has always played the second half of the season better than the first half in essentially every season of his career. From my memory, it's often we're saying, we're quoting as Suns fans, Devin Booker's points per game after January 1st or something like that, and it's like 29 points per game or whatever. It's always more. So I was just curious, is this the best start, the best first 2 games that he's had? In 18-19, he had a 35-point and a 25-point game to start the season. So points-wise, I think it's pretty comparable as far as what he scored. Outside of that, every game was what I expected, which was not a ton of scoring for him to start the season. And I think what we've seen in these 2 first games from Devin Booker so far, first of all, great scoring, great decision-making. But what we were going to talk about, you mentioned free throws as a team, and I think what we've seen from Devin Booker is kind of what we were talking about, and he needs to find some sort of balance here, but he's driving a lot. He's trying to get downhill. He's doing it in isolation. He's doing it around screens. He's finding ways to, as I put it when we talked about it preseason, get on the other side of those traps if he can, whether it be attacking early, rejecting the screen, or taking a patient dribble back and then trying to get around the slower defender. And I think that, for him, has turned into a significant amount of free throws. 7 for 7 in the Dallas game, 8 for 9 in this game against the Portland Trailblazers. This is how he finds ways to get easy points, and I think that has impressed me so far. What do you think?
And for him, they really are easy points too, because like you said, they're 7 for 7 and 8 for 9. If Booker gets more free throw attempts per game, he's going to hit them at a 90% rate or close to that, or
higher. He has at some points of his career.
Did he? Does he have a season above 90? That's
does he
crazy.
have like 91 or something like that? Was one year,
something like that. In any case, he's always been like above 85.
Yeah,
that's
always
his floor.
Good. Yeah,
great free throw shooter. All he needed to do was find ways to start working his superstar whistle. You know, he's on the cover of 2K, for God's sakes. It's about time. Devin Booker needs to work his own superstar whistle, get the superstar calls. But really, just a huge part of that is changing your shot profile and understanding when you need to get to the rim. And he has absolutely taken that message to heart, I think, through the first 2 games. And we're really seeing it, which is really encouraging. But the second part of it is just get the man some help. You know, like there's still a huge hole on the roster in terms of free throw creation. And I think it especially stands out when you have games like this where Booker can actually work his way to 8 or 9 free throws. And the Suns are still not getting as many free throws as the other team, because you just don't expect that out of Chris Paul, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, nor do you expect it out of Landry Shamet, Damian Lee, anyone on the bench, really. So it's tough. It's nice to see that Booker is taking it upon himself to be the one who creates rim pressure for the Suns. But on the other hand, you do get concerned with, it's game 2 of the season, and why are we burdening him to do this?
Yeah.
Why does Devin Booker need to play almost perfectly for the Suns to win games this year?
Yep.
That's not fair to him.
It's an excellent point.
It's tough.
Yeah, and I think,
and like, also, I guess just the last thing I'll say there, like, Booker's not perfect, obviously. The games where he shoots 4 for 17, they happen occasionally and doesn't get to the free throw line. They're coming.
Yeah, those are guys who
in the past,
shooting guards and point guards, they do that.
Right, but in the past, the Suns have been able to win those games regardless.
Yeah, Chris Paul was huge for those, yeah.
What will happen this year, the first time we see one of those Booker games? We haven't seen a Booker game like that in the first 2 games, so, you have to be a little curious.
The most free throws per game Devin Booker has ever averaged was in 2019-20. It was 7.3 free throw attempts per game. In that year, he shot 91.9%. And I believe at that time, out of the total number of free throws he shot in the season, it was the highest percentage for anyone who shot that much at that time. So it's like one of the best free throw shooting seasons in NBA history. He shoots more, his percentage goes up. It's kind of when you look at his stats, that's kind of how it looks. So if he can get to the line really well, that would help. Game 1, I think he was 1 for 1 from the 3-point line. In this game, 3 for 7. And, we'll talk about that balance all season because it tipped in the scales of the 3-point shot last year. But if you can find a way to continue getting those great pull-up threes we saw last year and then still get these free throws that he's getting, it's the season that we've all been waiting for. And it's a good start for him. I think, on both of those sides of that, because, they were kind of forcing him away from the 3-point shot, the pull-up 3-point shot in Dallas by trapping him so much. And he turned those traps oftentimes into 9 assists. And that's just a great skill for him to have. And it's just always the case with Devin Booker, where a season happens, there's things he needs to work on. He comes into the season, he's clearly worked on them. And I think that's been the case so far this season as well. He's getting to the rim. He's getting around guys. He's using that first step. He's doing it in isolation. He's also threading the needle on those traps incredibly well to the roll man. He's also being real patient with his dribbling and finding guys on the weak side with those traps as well. And those are all things that are really important for him. It's been a really great start for him, and I hope it's something that continues, especially that synergy with DeAndre Ayton. That's ideal.
For sure. For sure. That synergy, through 2 games has been so good. I think it's clear, again, just to reiterate, that it was really nice to see him in that point book role. I think we hypothesized that we might see some of it, but I didn't think we'd see it so soon, right?
Yeah.
The question, of course, is... Sure, go ahead.
It's with Cam Payne on the floor. I think it's something we didn't mention.
No, that's... Okay, no, because that's actually what I wanted to ask you. I was going to say, yes, it was with Cam Payne on the floor in Game 1. Going forward, the point book lineup we know is going to include healthy Cam Johnson when he's available, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton as 3 of the spots. I was going to ask you who should be the 5th spot.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because regardless, it was Cam Payne for a lot, which I think is an interesting thing that we didn't really talk about preseason, but it's an obvious thing that can happen. Cameron Payne on the floor, he has to be great defensively. He has to hit, catch, and shoot threes for this to work. But Cameron Payne on the floor, you can run the offense through Devin Booker really easily. And Cameron Payne's been okay on catch and shoot threes so far, I think. And that, even though there's a point guard on the floor, it's point book. It still is. In this Portland game, Okogie was playing really well, and defensively, of course, as we know.
I was also going to ask if you wanted to expand on that point, because I noticed you liked him.
Yeah, I think that he just does a lot of things to murk up any sort of play. It's actually very Mikal Bridges-esque, where he could tell the play they're running, right, and he messes it up. He just messes it up. He stops them from running a pick and roll well. He just blows it up. DHOs, he's predicted them. He top blocks when they're trying to cut. He ices when they need to ice, and just he looks smart. But offensively, he doesn't have a ton of skill, as we know. It is who he is.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to go out and just say who he is. But there was a stretch of this game, a short one, where Devin Booker was at point guard, and essentially Okogie was at the, I guess, other guard position. I don't even know what to call him when he's, he's guarding Damian Lillard. He's guarding Simons.
When he's not a shooter.
Yeah,
not a shooting guard.
Yeah, you might as well. He's like a center that guards point guards offensively. But and I don't know
Dunker
about that.
Spot guard, if you will.
I don't really mind that if all other guys can shoot. These are scenarios where I'm just like, play Ish Wainwright. If we're gonna find ways to experiment with Devin Booker at point guard, try to find ways to make that 5 out. And yes, you can do that with Jock Landale, but can you really? I'm not really 100% certain on that. So to me, that's when you start experimenting with Ish Wainwright, and then you do a true 5 out. And I know Okogie is not a true 5 out in that scenario. Yeah. But if he's the only one that is not a viable shooter, I think you can probably get away with that a lot better than if you had a big plus Okogie.
I'm not certain Ish Wainwright is the way to get true 5 out either, to be honest, just based on his track record. We've shown, or he's shown us that he can
right?
hit. Right. And so that just goes back to everything we were saying at the beginning, right?
Well, that's the real conversation, yeah.
Every time the Suns lose a game, everyone wants to bitch at Monty about rotations. But, what is he supposed to do with this exactly? Yeah. I don't know. James Jones has given him a bench of 8 equally flawed players.
Yeah, who are and capable we could argue, in the right lineups, but can't be. None of them are great.
And there's no perfect. I don't know. I just haven't found a perfect pattern here. If anyone's found a perfect pattern, feel free to let me know. But I'm not sure one exists.
Who's the best player off the bench so far? Is it Damian Lee?
It's Damian Lee.
What a disaster!
Game winner. Plus, he played 30 minutes tonight.
Yeah.
Where again, it's like if Damian Lee hits 36% of his threes this year and makes the right play on offense, then he's done exactly what he's being paid to do,
and can do a little bit of dribbling. Like not right in the half court, but like he could run it down in the fast break and then pitch it back to Devin Booker.
Well, that's exactly how he's going to get his 2 assists to 1 turnover per game.
Yeah.
But it's like you can't ask Damian Lee to be a defensive stopper. That's not who he's been in his career. That's asking too much. You can't ask Josh Okogie to shoot 40% from 3. That's not who he is either. That's too much. So it's like, there's no perfect blend on this bench.
So now that we've seen 2 games of it, real games, of course. We're talking about real games. What do you think is the best course of action for the Suns to try and fix this? Because I think, obviously Monty...
Trade Jay Crowder tomorrow for a competent bench player?
Yeah, are we are we at the point where we're saying, are you really not attaching a pick? I mean, like every team is kind of trying things out right now. It's probably the worst time to try and convince a team to trade someone. So the Suns are at a massive disadvantage. But like, meaning maybe they have to attach a pick, or maybe they have to be more willing to give up something else.
I mean,
but if you had to fix a single part of the bench first with a Jay Crowder trade, the idea I think initially was a 1-for-1 trade where you get some sort of wing back for Jay Crowder, and I think there is some validity to that idea because the Suns have no viable wings off the bench right now. We saw that with Cameron Johnson going out, Damian Lee, who's basically a shooting guard, playing small forward, power forward, for the rest of the game. But there's also the Cameron Payne question. Can he be a viable...
It's huge.
And especially now that we've seen a willingness to sit Chris Paul if he's not playing great, that makes the backup point guard position even more paramount than it was before. So I think if you had to just... And I'm not making you, put this in cement or anything. Yeah. But like, what do you think? How would you rank these issues that they have?
Yeah. First of all, I wouldn't actually trade. I'd be fine with trading Jay Crowder tomorrow for the right package. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, are they going to hold out till January on that?
They might have to.
They don't want to give up a pick.
Well, I mean, so, I think December, in the middle of December is when you can trade most players.
December 15th. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if we have to wait 2 months, Jesus Christ, we have to wait 2 months. But it might be a long 2 months, guys. Not in the sense that they're going to be terrible, just in the sense that they're going to sometimes lose winnable games like this because the bench blew a 7 or 8 point lead in 4 minutes. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, it would be nice to have another solid wing who's just not Torrey Craig, not Ish Wainwright, doesn't have too many question marks. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, though, I'm not sure we have the privilege there. I think really another guard who you just know can get downhill and create offensive advantage.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a campaign replacement necessarily. It could be a shooting guard too, but you need someone. You need someone who can take a little bit of pressure off of Chris Paul and Devin Booker in that role.
To that point, I'm watching the Charlotte Hornets today, and they went down 0-2. And LaMelo still not playing yet, and they don't look great. And Gordon Hayward had like 28 points and 7 assists or something, right? And Gordon Hayward is a wing who is a point guard, basically. Like he's both of those things. And I'm like, obviously he has a massive contract. He's an injury risk, and but he's the perfect fix for like everything happening for the Suns right now.
But yeah, and think about the Suns' rotation right now. I mean, look, the Hornets are trying to be competitive, so I don't actually think this trade would work.
Well, like how long will they try to be competitive remains the question with teams like the Hornets that could, like how great would Wemby be next to LaMelo? That'd be the most fun team in the NBA.
The Suns have $30 million in salary that they're not using, or that they're hardly using.
Yeah.
$10 million in Jay Crowder, who's not playing. $10 million in Dario Saric, who's played 2 minutes through 2 games.
Now wait, what are you about to say?
What?
Are you going to say Landry Shamet?
And $10 million in Landry Shamet, who I know is
he would have helped today.
Damian Lee has already earned his rotation spot.
Landry Shamet would have been good today. I'm gonna.
When did Landry Shamet have a game winner last year, Mike?
That's true.
Damian Lee did that shit in game 1.
Yeah. You're right. Though.
In all seriousness, though,
they could trade any one of those guys, and we wouldn't. None of us would cry.
Damian Lee is doing for $2 million what Landry Shamet is doing for 10. Why keep Shamet?
I wouldn't say that. I would. You have to guard. You still have to guard Landry Shamet. You know, like you can leave Damian Lee.
The point is, if you see an appealing $25 to $30 million contract out there that a team doesn't want, I don't know if that's going to be the Charlotte Hornets and Gordon Hayward specifically, but that over time a team that is becoming less competitive no longer wants to burden themselves with. Yeah, that's where we are with the Suns. You got the money. You just have to be willing to let it go.
Yeah, the other team that I'd like to mention is the Boston Celtics, who supposedly might be interested, I should say, in Jay Crowder. Malcolm Brogdon playing pretty well for them. Whether or not he remains healthy is always a question mark, but they do still have Derek White. The Suns were supposedly interested in Derek White. I talked about it before the season begins. There's just such an obvious reason why they were interested in Derek White, and we saw it in Game 1. They sat Chris Paul. Derek White would have been in there instead of Cameron Payne in that scenario because he's a good defender. And I understand why they would be interested in somebody like Derek White. I'm not saying he'd fix everything for the Suns offensively. I'm not sure he's much better than Cameron Payne. He's probably maybe a little better off the ball. But defensively, all of a sudden you're talking about those point book lineups, and it's like, all right, he makes a lot more sense in those point book lineups. I'm not sure if that's something the Suns want to do. They probably want somebody else along with Derek White. I don't know if they can find a version to do that, but I think watching Game 1 in particular, there was an obvious reason why they were interested in Derek White. I don't have any other names in particular. You know, those are just two guys that were on my mind. Like Gordon Hayward in particular, I'm like, he would just be so great. The ideal version of him is exactly what the Suns need. Look, he's not going to be a great defender, but the entire offense could be run through him anytime Chris Paul or Devin Booker are off the floor, and he can handle that burden relatively well until he gets hurt. And you know, he'd be pretty good size-wise as well. So I think for the Suns, there is some value in waiting this out a little longer. And I don't think that Suns fans are going to be particularly happy to hear us say that. But, you know, if the Hornets are like 0-7 or 1-10 or something a few weeks from now, and LaMelo comes back, he doesn't look great, I don't know. You know, maybe they try to make some moves at that point instead of trying to do it right now when everyone is just trying to see what they have.
You know which team is 2-0 right now who that contains a certain player that I'm sure people have been screaming at us from their cars or
and they don't want to be 2-0, right?
They don't want to be 2-0, but this player has been one of the players, not the only one, but has led them to being 2-0.
Yeah.
Jordan Clarkson and the Utah Jazz.
They're looking at him going, Monty could fix him. He could do
29 points tonight, 5 rebounds, 6 assists.
There's nobody on the Suns bench that can do that. I'm like I said at last episode, I'm already closer to being okay with that than I was previously, just watching the team play. Look, I'm not sure that it would work as far as making the Suns closer to a better contender. I do think they'd probably be a better regular season team with Jordan Clarkson on the team, and maybe that would help enough. But yeah, somebody look, and I think the Jazz are interesting. Being 2-0, like I said, they don't want to be. So like that's a good example of a team that's winning when they probably would rather not and would rather lose. Maybe you snipe Vanderbilt for something else or something like that instead of just going after Jordan Clarkson. But there are going to be other teams too. You know, there are going to be other teams too, and the Suns have to be the first one to make that trade, basically, right? They have to be the first one to do it. Even I was thinking about Buddy Hield. You know, I'm not sure if there's a way to do that, but that would be great. Buddy Hield off the bench for the Suns. You can run a lot of the offense through him, maybe not with his dribbling, but his shooting prowess. One of the best three-point shooters in the history of the NBA, if you look at volume. I wouldn't mind that either. These are just massive salaries that the Suns would have to figure out a way to provide enough value to the teams that they're trading to, and then be willing to take on that level of salary for, in a lot of these cases, more than 1 year, like Gordon Hayward or Buddy Hield. So it's just throwing some names out there, seeing what sticks. Before we go, Sam, I wanted to ask you about the non-extension for Cameron Johnson. We haven't talked about it. I talked about it on the Patreon podcast without you. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's good that you brought it up. I know it's kind of old news for people at this point, but yeah, we didn't get a chance to address it on the main feed pod at least. It's unfortunate, man, and I am finding it hard to be outraged about it several days out, but I would describe my feelings more as like dull disappointment or general sadness in, just in the sense that I consider Cam Johnson to be a very important part of the future core of the Phoenix Suns, and I wanted that commitment shown to him as early as possible, especially in the wake of, I wouldn't call it a disaster, but this DeAndre Ayton situation that we all think wasn't handled the best, and now we're having these questions about, does DA even want to be here, even if he's technically saying the right things to the media? You just want to do everything in your power to avoid another situation like that with Cam Johnson, even if it leads to a little bit of an overpay, in my opinion. I wanted that to be taken care of at the end of year 3 and not have to go to restricted free agency again. So I think it sucks. I know certain figures have been reported in terms of differences between what Cam wanted and what the Suns were offering. I don't know, exactly how far apart the two sides actually were. But I don't think, at least in theory, that it should have been all that difficult to come to an agreement.
Yeah, we heard it was pretty far apart, full disclosure. But with Cam, I think what's disappointing, one, I don't want to do another podcast explaining the sign-and trade rules after the season.
That's an underrated part. Yep.
Because as far as the Suns having assets in tow to make moves if this season doesn't work, they have one that's not now. He's a restricted free agent, meaning they can still keep him. But if they want to make moves, and Cameron Johnson was supposed to be one of those moves, he can't be now. I mean, there's a sign-and-trade possibility, but not to relive it because it'd be another half an hour. But trading people in sign-and-trades, trading players in sign-and-trades is hard. And there's a lot of things that go into it. Right. And the amount of salary you can take back is essentially half of what they're getting on their new team. So it's not equal value when trading players like that. So, just signing him to some kind of extension, then he can be traded in the offseason with that extension. Not saying you definitely do it, but limiting your ability to do that is really unfortunate. There is a scenario where the Suns, quote unquote, win in this scenario where Cameron Johnson, I don't know, maybe he just continues to be banged up throughout the season and they get him at somewhat of a discount. Or, I don't know, if he doesn't play as well, that's not really a win, but you can get him potentially for less. There's also a scenario where he balls out. Second half of the season, averages 18 points. In the second half of the season, all of a sudden you're paying him more. But, you keep him if you want. You don't if you don't want. They're going to have a lot of options. It's not the same as not extending DeAndre Ayton, which I think was a really stupid decision at the time. But it is still not ideal, I think.
I wish I knew the information that we really just don't have. No one has, as far as I know, that I wish we knew is to what extent ownership plays a part.
That's the main question, yeah. And it seems like Cameron Johnson was under the impression that complicated things. Because that was the first thing he said when he was asked about it after the deadline ended. That's just that it was hard to do it in this ownership situation, which makes me feel like they were like, look, we tried, Cam. James Jones went to him, but old Sam Garvin said no. And Sam Garvin is he's just sitting, with one of those like accountant green visors and a calculator outside of the meeting watching them meet with Cameron Johnson or whatever. But mean old Sam Garvin said no. And that's where it ended up with Cam. So kind of unfortunate. We'll see what ends up happening at the end of the season with that. We don't have to make that a big discussion. Otherwise, the amount that you're willing to pay Cameron Johnson as fans will change based on the game that he just played. Because those all I know is, type of granular conversations are not as valuable.
For both the Suns' sake, wanting to win a championship, and for Cam's own sake, he's going to take a lot of little hits and bruises this year at the power forward spot. We've already seen him get chipped up a little bit in these first 2 games. And I hope he stays healthy. I really hope he does. It's important for both sides.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we saw the glimpses of what the offense could look like, and it could look amazing if he's in there doing the right things. So I really hope he does stay healthy. And look, the Suns could still trade for a different starting power forward. I don't think that Cameron Johnson's starting spot is guaranteed if they find a way to upgrade. If they got Harrison Barnes, I think that would be a battle for the starting spot, or even Gordon Hayward, somebody like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The season has started for the rest of the NBA as well, as we know. Any teams stand out to you that you want to watch this season? Any teams that you're looking forward to seeing?
Oh, man. So, yeah, I did tell you, unfortunately, before that I have not been so much a presence as I normally am just in the general NBA community the past couple weeks because I've been out of the country and the games happen at 4 a.m. here. I'm coming back in a couple days. Just in general, though, for who I'm excited to watch, obviously a lot of Cleveland, a lot of Minnesota, a lot of these teams that have made transactions and are going to be interesting.
Minnesota going wire to wire with OKC and Utah and losing to the Jazz. How do you feel about that?
I didn't watch the game, so I really can't. I can't. It's just one of those things where I have to defer to people who actually watched at this point. But good for the Jazz, man. I hope they win a lot of games and don't get Wemby. Sounds like a great outcome.
One thing I'll say about Gobert is there's no question when teams come in to play against Gobert of how to play against that team, right? Make him move around as much as possible, stretch the floor as much as possible with him on the floor. Dude's running around, twisting all different directions, trying to keep up with the ball being passed around. So that'll be interesting to see.
It is a really wonky offense in general in Minnesota. I think we kind of knew that coming in. They don't have just not having a true point guard, considering how much Suns fans complain about, are there enough touches to go around for everyone? And we complain about that with Chris Paul as our point guard. It's a lot more difficult when you have D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and now you add Rudy Gobert to the mix. Yep. Do you have any main takeaways here through 2 games? Any teams?
The Lakers seem pretty bad.
Okay, yeah. If there's anything that has been not inescapable for me from abroad for the past week, it's even if you're not watching the games, you still see Lakers slander everywhere.
They look bad, yeah. They just look really bad, so that's fun. And I think they're going to be on TV a lot, so that part kind of sucks. I have League Pass, so I can just skip those games whenever possible anyway. The Cavs are less fun for me than I was hoping they would be. There is going to be some level of learning curve for them to get used to each other. Darius Garland got poked in the eye, had some sort of retinal issue, which kind of sucked. It'd be nice to see them play together a little bit more, but missed the second half of that game. Outside of that, I don't know, Benedict Mathurin, it's always the young guys at first. Benedict Mathurin for the Pacers looks pretty awesome. I have yet to watch them play. I just see highlights and I'm like, man, this guy rocks. Paolo looks pretty amazing. Banchero for the Orlando Magic, who I think could be relatively fun this year. As the Suns have gotten better, I think my time has been, when I watch other teams, has been more about watching these young guys get better. And when the Suns were kind of bad and you're watching Devin Booker get better, I was watching the Warriors be really good. It's I want to balance out watching a good team and watching teams with young guys because there's something fun about watching young guys. So I think I'll probably watch a little bit more of the young guys.
I've really noticed in the past few years, as someone, we've said it a million times, we're not draft guys. As the Suns have gotten good, but more specifically as the Suns have decided to be good and also not give a shit about the draft, I've found that my knowledge of these guys when they come into the league is really at an all-time low, unfortunately. There was that era around 2015 to 2018 where I really did kind of give a shit about the draft because the Suns were there.
They had picks,
and I really had a good feel for at least all the lottery prospects going in every year. Which I know there's some people listening to this who have their big boards of 250 names who are pushing up their glasses and saying he only thinks about the lottery. But no, for me that was a lot. And now it's I really don't know much about these guys going in because I know the Suns aren't going to be there and I know they're a good team. And so it makes it more exciting at the beginning of the season to watch bad teams with young players because it's
the first time you've ever seen them.
Not
sometimes for me it is. I'm not
because because I'm not afraid to shy away from it's okay to admit when you don't know things and to admit that you're casual about things.
I didn't watch Herb Jones film before the season last year, and I had a great time watching Herb Jones.
Because I'm not a crackhead, there's, sometimes it's okay to take a step back. And but discovering these guys once the NBA season actually begins, that's always really fun.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I'm not even joking. For some of these players, it'll be the first time that I've seen them play. Full disclosure for those listening, I'm going out of town now that Sam's coming back. But we should still have a Patreon episode and then an episode when I get back. I'll be back next weekend. But the games in the meantime are not easy, Sam. The Clippers on Sunday, the Warriors on Tuesday, and then the really fun to watch and probably one of the best teams so far, the Pelicans on Friday. A tough week. And look, the reality of the Western Conference right now, every week is tough. Like, you're rarely going to have weeks off. If the Suns
are 1-4 at the time of our next recording,
yeah,
we are gonna hear about it from the national audience.
I'm gonna burn my Jay Crowder shirt.
Need to find a way to eke these out, but it's gonna be
people
tough.
are gonna be like the vibes. Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for listening. If you want to join, now's a good time. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, it's patreon.com/thetimeline. We're gonna do extra episodes every week, and the Discord is really fun. In games, just throughout the day, we have a lot of fun in the Discord. You can join if you join our Patreon as well. Feel free to join that. But we will be back with an episode for the Patreon midweek, and then a regular episode next week after those 3 brutal games. Thanks everyone for listening.